Ex-Royal Protection Cop Simon is coming through right now. And we are gonna, hello Simon, thank you very much for coming on.
Good evening, Shaun.
Yeah, really appreciate this. Where in the UK are you?
Essex.
Essex, okay, not far from me then. I'm over in Guildford.
Yeah. Across the divide.
Yeah. Are you okay to just introduce yourself to the viewers and let them know, how you ended up becoming part of the SO19 firearms and then Royal Personal Protection?
Yeah, sure. My name's Simon Morgan. I'm a former Metropolitan Police officer, and during my service, I served on the Territorial Support Group, SO19, the Force Firearms Unit, and my final posting was at SO14, Royalty Personal Protection.
Why did you become a cop in the first place, and did you aspire to become a Royal Protection cop, or did that just happen?
I did. It sounds very kind of contrived and conceited, but yes, I did structure my career to get to that point. I did want to be a police officer. Most probably when I was going through university, I decided, yes, I wanted to be a police officer. It was a good career, but I did then structure every point of my career to take me to royalty protection. So I joined the Metropolitan Police Service, first of all, because they are the only police service that has a full-time protection department. I then got posted to Leighton in East London, which, coming up from South Wales, I didn't actually know where that was. I had to look at it on a map. The only places in London I knew were Paddington train station and Leicester Square. So that was a great ground to learn on, very diverse community and extremely busy. But I knew where I wanted to go. So the next opportunity for me, once I finished my probation, was to join the public order unit based at Paddington Green. And I chose Paddington Green out of all the other 5 units because they carried firearms. And at that time, I knew it was going to be a key development in my career. And obviously, I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket, because if I realized that I didn't like guns or didn't like the sound of it going bang, or I wasn't very good, then structuring my career to that point, I'd have to change, but I'd have something to fall back on. Spent many great years on the public order unit. We dealt with all disorder and disaster that happened kind of within London. So, lots of stuff that we were involved in, some of it very routine and some of it quite spectacular, I suppose, Paddington rail crash and things like that, as well as the May Day kind of riots. And then I moved on to the Force Firearms Unit, SO19, based in East London. And that was probably one of the most challenging but exciting times in my career. You're working with some great people, like-minded individuals. Teamwork is key. And, you're going around London dealing with all types of armed criminality, the real upper echelons of organised crime and, to a certain extent, terrorism as well. And then I had the opportunity to apply for royalty protection, which at that time, I just actually had my first child. And it was a big decision. Do I now go and take myself away from home for effectively weeks on end? You're already told you spend at least a third of the year away. So that was a big decision. But I was supported by my wife, and I went through, and I was fortunate to pass the selection process, pass all the courses. And then I joined Royalty Protection in February 2007. And I served through that department until I retired in June of 2013.
So we've interviewed a lot of ex-cops on the channel, and they describe various training procedures. When you become a Royal Protection cop, does that require an extra level of training?
Not necessarily. You do the same bodyguard course. So bodyguarding in the Met is split into 2 different departments: royalty protection and ministerial protection. So you all do the same course, but ultimately you end up working for 2 different types of people. With regards to the training is the same. And I would argue that they're looking for the same qualities in that person, which is ultimately communication being the key one, decision-making under pressure. And I think, as with all protection officers, you have to have the ability to walk and talk at the same time. So the training that you go through is constantly testing and evaluating whether you are that person who can think ahead. where you are that person that can take in all that information, prioritize what is important, discard what isn't, and kind of make a decision. And that's how the training process tests you. So whilst, like I said, they're not looking for anything, or rather you're not trained in any different way, but they are looking for particular things and particular qualities.
So when you go by the palace, you see police and you see soldiers. What is the relationship between the police and the soldiers?
With regards to the military play a ceremonial role at all royal palaces, Windsor Castle, Buckingham Palace, and James's Palace. So they play a ceremonial role, and the actual security role is delivered by the police service. And certainly within the Metropolitan Police Service, Royalty Protection, you have three strands. You have the static protection, which is the uniformed officers, which is what you see supporting the soldiers in their role. Then you have personal protection officers like myself, and then you have the special escort group, which are the motorcycle outriders that deal with all vehicle movements, whether that actually be a member of the royal family, prime minister, or indeed high value loads such as drugs or the crown jewels, for argument's sake. They move the crown jewels around as well.
Do you watch The Crown?
I don't, and that's not a kind of conscious decision of whether I agree or disagree with it. It was way before my time. The current episodes of The Crown are way before my time of service. It's just something that I just didn't get round to watching. I actually did the premiere, the Netflix premiere in Leicester Square when it first came out, but actually watching it, no. I mean, I have a tendency not to watch many cop-based dramas, maybe, because you end up, unpicking them and thinking, well, that's entertainment, but it's not quite right.
So The Crown is based on true news stories, and
Yeah.
there was the news story of the man who just shows up in the Queen's bedroom one night.
Yeah, Michael Fagan. Yeah, a very well documented episode.
So how did things change after that episode in terms of royal protection security?
Yeah, I mean, monumentally. That was a catastrophic failure. And could have been kind of a lot worse. So lots of the processes that were put in place, there were processes at that time, but with regards to the technical specifications or the alarms, they'd had errors with the alarms, and they'd end up discounting them and turning them off and things like that. So the technical measures that are in place are a lot better, naturally, as they would be now over the expanse of time. With regards to the training, there are dedicated departments and dedicated roles within that of royalty protection now that have responsibility for key physical areas as well as key people within the royal household. So lots of things changed, and ultimately it expanded in size. What was basically an attachment from the local police stations became royalty protection as you know it now. And there's been other incidents as well which have added to that. The Princess Royal attack on the Mall as well, that added to the current royalty protection, the dedicated department that you see now, because it's a tremendous responsibility that you have as a duty of care to protect another individual. Somebody's putting their life rather, in your hands, and you are there ultimately to preserve life.
So what was an average day like for you? Did you interact with the royals up close? And how did you find that? If you did, was it intimidating?
No, it wasn't intimidating. You've got to remember they are people like you and I. And, like I said earlier on, one of the key attributes of a protection officer is the ability to communicate. You've got to be able to communicate across the whole spectrum, whether that's the man who's holding the door for you, or whether it is a member of the royal family. And you will converse. You always have to be respectful, because that's the very definition of your role, but they're also very respectful of the role that you do as well. So it's a mutual understanding and a mutual respect. With regards to your average day, what is an average day? And I'm sure every other uniformed police officer will say the same thing. What is an average day? But your average day has consisted of many busy days beforehand, all the planning that you have to go through, all the meetings, all the tabletop exercises, or going through all the contingencies, all the eventualities for your average day to take place, whether that be a visit somewhere or indeed a vehicle movement. somewhere else, someone coming to see you. All these things actually take a lot of time in the process to kind of get through. So your average day operationally, whilst it's exceptionally busy, and you are constantly reassessing how that day is going on, what is happening, what's going well, what's not going well, you are making sure that the day is going to plan. That is the key issue. So you see they talk about the protection officer being the classic swan, very graceful across the top of the water, but underneath the water it's going 10 to the dozen, and it's really kind of quick and everything's going on. But that's the facade that you look to create. So your average day should be one that goes to plan, only because you've done the planning beforehand.
So we interviewed another Royal Protection cop, and he said there was various levels of respect coming down from the royals themselves, and he actually cited Prince Andrew as someone who was quite rude to him and other staff members. Did you ever experience anything like that?
No, I didn't, to be honest with you. Kind of quite the opposite. I found the Duke of York to be very pleasant, very humorous, very respectful at the time. He was very appreciative for what we did, and there was always, a good morning, a good evening at the end of the day. If you're not working the weekend, or it's Christmas or it's Easter, have a great time with your family. So, again, different people see different people in different ways, but certainly from a protection perspective, you have to have that respect on both sides. You have to build up that rapport, because that individual, like I said, is ultimately putting their life in your hands. So, if there is any form of aggravation, then, that relationship wouldn't work, because it's also built on trust as well. They're trusting you to do your job when it's required. So, across the board, all family members are different. They all bring their different personalities. But I think on the royalty side, because it's a cradle to grave protection package that they get, they're used to it. They know what they like to see. They know ultimately what they don't like to see. And they're just used to it. They're used to you being there. And they know exactly why you are there.
When they receive visitors, do you guys have to screen them?
Well, again, that's part of the multi-layered approach with regards to security, how that invite is sent out, what form of identification is required to actually get through the doors. And then our uniformed colleagues would deal with that screening, very similar to airport style security, to get beyond the outer fences. But yes, you're always kind of in and around when these meetings are taking place. But again, it's part of the multi approach as to how people get from the outside to the inside.
When the royal family members travel around, do you guys accompany them, and what records do you keep of their movements?
Again, it is a 24/7 package. So you are kind of there when they kind of travel, and again, it's kind of logged as to where you've been in a central duty role. So you have a duty state, because ultimately you have to be kind of on duty, and you'll show on duty and you'll show off duty.
So Prince Andrew has been slated then for not producing the records of his movements when certain allegations were made about him. Would those records exist somewhere?
It depends what kind of records you're talking about. If there'd be flight manifests and things like that, I should imagine those would be kind of in existence. That wouldn't necessarily be something that a protection officer would get involved in with regards to his principal.
Yeah, so he said, for example, he went to Pizza Express Woking, he wasn't at Club Tramp, things like that. Would those have been documented because of the security that would have gone with him?
Not necessarily, because you would have been, if that's a normal day, then you'd have been on at a certain time and you'd been off at a certain time. Depending whether it was official or private. Obviously, official visits are all documented because of the mechanisms that have to go in place to create that visit. If it's something that's kind of private or unofficial, then most probably not.
And have you what year did you start at the Royal Protection, did you say?
2007.
2007 until when?
2013.
2013. So like if there's like a birthday celebration or a big party and there's guests coming in from all over the world, I imagine that would make your work really difficult, would it?
Well, it becomes lots of moving parts. And again, it's dealt with at various different levels, how people are are invited? Are they a guest of a government department? Are they a guest of the Queen? All these things do go through certain offices and certain protocols. From a protection officer's perspective, you most probably wouldn't get involved with the finite details of that particular event with regards to kind of invites. There'd be other people who would deal with that.
So something of the magnitude of a wedding, like Princess Di's wedding, I imagine the preparation for that would have been, they would have to start that years in advance, would they?
Well, you do. I mean, I can't talk about that one because obviously way before my time, I watched it on telly as a schoolboy. But I was involved in the wedding of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and again, it's a massive event. It's an event of state. It's not just a British event. It's a global event. It's a global event. Even before the days of a 24-hour kind of global media, the eyes of the world are looking on you. And I think as Britain, as UK PLC, we do set our stall out to say that we are very good at what we do with regards to policing such major events. So the planning that goes into it, again, it's just constant reevaluating. So many other stakeholders are involved. You've got your firearms teams, you've got your mounted branch, traffic department, all these things, and they all knit in together for that one particular event. Because you're conscious, whenever you're a protection officer, you're conscious of how many hats you have on and who you are representing, because you know that you're not in position for things to go wrong. So the hats are the Metropolitan Police Service, Royalty Protection, UK Policing, the Home Office, Her Majesty's Government, Her Majesty's Commonwealth, every British business that trades under a British flag and says that we're good because we're British. So when you're out there with a member of the royal family, you have all these pressures, knowing that your day cannot go wrong and the decisions that you make have to be correct. So then just magnify that 100, 1,000 times, and then you have the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's wedding, where everybody is looking at that. People are looking at it under the microscope, most probably not at the policing of the event itself, because that's most probably not particularly interesting. People are looking at the cars, they're looking at the soldiers on their horses, they're looking at the great and the good who've come and who's wearing this fashion and that fashion. The police deployment in that operation most probably goes very much kind of unnoticed, which is great, because that's what you're looking to achieve. It's not about the police operation, it's about the royal wedding and those that are attending it and those that wish to see it. And that, to a certain extent, is the British style of police protection. It's called discreet and unobtrusive. It's not presidential. There is a vast difference between those two categories of delivery.
What was your most stressful situation as a Royal Protection cop?
Most probably my first ever Royal Walkabout. First ever Royal Walkabout with Her Majesty the Queen. We went to Brighton for the day. I'd already been in the department a couple of weeks, and that's it. You're out. You're working with the most senior member of the royal family. You're putting them in the public domain, and that was most probably. You can't replicate that in training. You can train for a walkabout in training, and somebody can come over the barriers or something can happen, but that's training, and that's kind of different. You get there as a live piece of work, and I think both the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh were there as well, and we were doing several walkabouts throughout the day. And I can remember being exceptionally nervous the night before. You don't want anything to go wrong. You don't want something to go wrong personally. You don't want to let your team down. You don't want to let all the other kind of hats that you're wearing. And I can remember getting back in the car after we put the Queen back on the train with some of the team, and we made our way back to London. And I had the mother of all headaches. It was just, I was physically and mentally drained. And I was with a senior protection officer at the time who just looked at me and said, "You'll get used to it." But it was just, and you've been out with the Queen for, 10, 15 minutes. That was it. That was your Royal Walkabout in, 3 or 4 different sections. Yeah, I was washed out. But you do get used to it. You understand, you start to learn your role. and you understand more and more what you're looking for, and that's the experience as it kind of comes through. It takes about 2 years to learn the whole of the royal calendar.
Wow. Well, you've been very professional with all of your answers this evening. I'm going to ask you for your personal opinion now on Meghan and Harry renouncing royal duties.
Ultimately, it's their choice. I think it's very sad with regards to them stepping away. Having worked with Prince Harry during my time in the department, he was a great principal. He was very respectful of our role. Coming back to that two-way rapport that you build up. But it's their choice. They've obviously wished to take a different path, and the Queen has allowed them to do that. And ultimately the monarchy will carry on, and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will carry on doing their thing. But I think it's very sad for the institution that is the monarchy, and I think it's very sad for UK, because lots of people liked kind of Prince Harry, and they wanted to see him at the events, and he was always somebody that people would come out to see, and lots of people would have lost that. And I think people had an affinity with him as well, because what both him and his brother had gone through with regards to the loss of their mother. So yeah, it's kind of very sad, but life goes on.
Did you ever see any of the celebs who there have been scandals about come and go during your time? I'm talking Jimmy Savile, Ghislaine Maxwell, Harvey Weinstein. We've seen pictures of them at royal functions.
No, not again. You're not looking for kind of particular names to a certain extent, or particular people. Some people stand out because kind of who they are. But from my perspective, no, I didn't see any of those people kind of mentioned. For me, I'm a big sportsman, so I was more interested in the sports stars that would attend, and realize how tall someone like Martin Johnson is and things like this. So yeah, for me, you're concentrating on your job, not necessarily who else is kind of in the room. And certainly, some of those things were before my time in any case.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, Simon. Do you want to tell the people what you're doing now, and can people contact you and support your work? And do you have a book out or anything?
No, I don't. Not allowed to write a book, so that's that one covered. But yeah, we run a private security team now called Trojan Consultancy. So we work for people of wealth, visibility, and status. Is most probably the easiest way to look at it. So we look after high net worth individuals, and we take the skills that we learned at Royalty Protection, and we work for a select group of people in the private sector now. All the team are former members of Royalty Protection or Ministerial Protection, and yeah, that's what we do. So from that good grounding of being a police protection officer, we now get to have a second life and work in the private sector.
All right. Well, huge thank you for coming on tonight then, and just
no, my pleasure. Thank you.
It's absolutely fascinating to hear the details. So you have a great rest of your week. Cheers.
I will. Thank you very much. Speak again soon.
Simon. Bye-bye.
Bye.